Today is Halloween when this video is being released, and it doubles as the finale to the 2021 Macabre Month of Horror. If you missed out on the rest of this season's festivities, check out the playlist in the description. I've been putting out tons of horror content this month, so check it all out. Now, I just might be the world's biggest Brad Dourif fan. I absolutely love the guy. I think he's extremely underrated as an actor. You know who else is underrated? Tobe Hooper. So when you get the two of them together for a trashy, fiery horror flick in 1990, the result was bound to be underrated as well. Today I'm talking about Spontaneous Combustion, a film with a bullshit 4.7 on IMDb, a disgraceful 18% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, a film so forgotten that it doesn't even have a critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, or even a landing page on Metacritic, a film that is so unbeloved that it isn't available to stream anywhere. It can't be rented or purchased anywhere online. At least you can still pick it up on physical media. But as a result of it being so hard to find, the footage you'll be seeing in this review isn't the highest quality, because it's coming from a VHS rip. But honestly, Spontaneous Combustion is the sort of film that just kind of perfectly fits that VHS aesthetic anyway. It's that type of trash. So join me in celebrating a film that I believe truly deserves more respect! Now, am I saying that Spontaneous Combustion is a 10 out of 10 film? Of course not. I am by no means suggesting that Spontaneous Combustion is perfect, or even that it's particularly great, honestly, but I am insisting that it's a hell of a lot better than people seem to want to give it credit for. Like this person who said, the worst film ever made, pure genius. Wait, which is it? Or this reviewer who rated the movie a half star out of 5, then wrote the insightful review, half star out of 4 stars. Or this person who reviewed it in all caps saying, trash movie, mediocre, fuck it. I'm putting more effort into trying to read this review than the guy spent writing it. If you've been following along with this year's Macabre Month of Horror, then you know that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre recently topped my list of my personal 100 favorite horror films. And if you haven't been following the Macabre Month of Horror, then get on that. There's a playlist in the description. I love the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I think Tobe Hooper is severely underrated as a director. Not least of all because of this rumor that he didn't actually direct Poltergeist, and that it was really Steven Spielberg. Fuck anyone who perpetuates that bullshit lie. My man Hoops directed Poltergeist. Why you gotta try to take that away from him? And I think Tobe Hooper's in good form here in the director's chair, even though he's working with what is undoubtedly a flawed script. It's not all bad in the writing department, though. It's got a killer premise, and I think it actually has some great ideas, too. They just aren't always executed the best in the screenplay. Spontaneous Combustion is about... I mean, come on, the title's pretty self-explanatory. Do you really need me to explain it? Spontaneous human combustion is a freaky real-life phenomenon, and by real life, I just mean it's an actual phenomenon that some people thought/think was/is real. But scientifically speaking, it's pretty implausible and almost certainly just bogus. I mean, the idea first started circulating back in the Victorian era, which was a time when doctors thought that women were small, inside-out men. That's true, by the way. They really thought that. There have been real inexplicable deaths throughout history attributed to spontaneous human combustion, but modern science has other theories for what probably happened. Most convincing is the Wick effect, where it was actually John Wick who snuck in and murdered them without leaving a trace. Now, but the Wick effect is actually real. It supposes that the clothes worn by a victim soaked up melted fat, and then those clothes acted like a wick to the candle of the person's body. I don't know how or why these weirdos were so saturated in melted fat, but there you go. Spontaneous Combustion opens with some classic 1950s nuclear testing. And what song do they play during the test?
I don't want to set the world on fire.
I wonder if this is where Fallout got the idea to associate this song with the nuclear apocalypse.
I don't want to set the world on fire.
These two are the parents of our main character played by Brad Dourif, but he hasn't been born yet. The government is using them as guinea pigs to test out anti-radiation tech and vaccines. As you would probably guess, there are unfortunate side effects, and they manifest most directly in the form of spontaneous human combustion. As their offspring, Brad Dourif is described as essentially being a nuclear bomb in a human body. It's a fun twist on the idea of the nuclear family. There's some pretty overt anti-nuclear messaging to the film, but I also think that there's some clever pro-choice messaging to the film as well, if you read into it. You see, the military and scientists learn that the fetus is almost certain to be adversely affected by the nuclear testing its mother endured. The scientists and military personnel consider an abortion.
So what do we do about it?
You mean an abortion? I don't know. That makes me awfully uneasy.
I think it's probably advisable under the circumstances.
But end up deciding not to. They choose to not even tell the parents about the risks. So you watch the rest of the film, and you see all the pain and death and suffering, and you know that an abortion would have prevented all of this horror. But the government said no. Dorff even curses being born, and the military man who made the call takes ownership of his life.
You're a lucky man. I have watched over you as if you were mine. I've given you everything. You should thank me.
Thank you?
By all rights, you should never have been born. And if it wasn't for me, you never would have been. Don't you see, Sam? I am your father. Brian Bell was just a mistake, Buck. I made the sun rise twice that morning in 1955.
I think that's some pretty goddamn clever thematic messaging stuck in the middle of this trashy horror movie. And you're telling me that none of the other critics picked up on this? Let's just check and make sure. There aren't that many professional reviews for Spontaneous Combustion online. But let's see here. This one starts with, amateur actor Sam Kramer, Brad Dourif, discovers he is cursed with... Wait, hang on. Are you kidding me? Amateur actor? He's a fucking school teacher in the movie. How do you get that wrong? What, because he jokes around auditioning for the school play at the beginning?
That was awful. Give him the hook.
What are you talking about? That was great stuff.
And Kramer? His name's Bell. Jesus Christ. Not even one sentence in. And everything you said about this movie has been wrong. Oh, and of course they perpetuate that stupid Spielberg ghost director myth with Poltergeist. All right, enough of this bullshit. Not doing this review. This movie is not bad. It's not particularly great either. Fine, but it's pretty good. It moves fast, it's got a great lead performance, and it's a ton of fun. I mean, how can you not appreciate a film where Brad Dourif shouts fire through a telephone?
Look, I'm not responsible for chasing down people for personal calls. Listen, you idiot! I don't think this is as important as your lousy snap.
He is so perfectly cast in this part. No one shouts better than Brad Dourif. So when you need someone to literally shout fire, who better? The film has great fun with the idea of being a hothead or having a hot temper.
Fine, God damn you!
Since we were talking about telephones, what is up with the glowing phone? Sorry, the plural glowing phones. There's even a scene where the girlfriend almost answers a call, but then doesn't because that phone doesn't glow. There's a glowing radio too, by the way, in case you were wondering. The guy he shouts fire through the phone to, by the way, is John Landis, director of films like The Blues Brothers and An American Werewolf in London. He's definitely got a tarnished legacy, but I love when horror directors put other horror directors in their movies, like when David Cronenberg played the killer in Nightbreed, or when George A. Romero and Roger Corman popped up in Silence of the Lambs. This scene with Landis must be one of the best horror cameos ever. It is so fucking crazy. Tobe Hooper has a tiny cameo too. No lines for him, though. He's the guy in the bathroom. And this eye patch wearing scientist is a director too. It's Hungarian filmmaker Andre de Toth, who is one of Tarantino's favorite directors. Made the original House of Wax. Well, I guess the original remake, not the subsequent remake. And Spontaneous Combustion was Andre de Toth's only acting role ever. So that's cool to see. And the guy who plays Mr. Fitzpatrick is a dude named Dick Warlock, who, besides having a ridiculous name, is better known as a stuntman. In fact, he was the stunt coordinator for this film, and also for both Halloween 2 and Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, which is a film I have previously made a Deserves More Respect video about, so go check that one out. Link is in the description. And one last cameo. This film really is jam-packed. The guy known for playing more hobos than possibly anyone else, Buck Flower. He's the voice of a preacher on the radio. I really like that the bad guy isn't the dude shooting flames. It's the US military. Dorff might be killing people throughout and literally melting before our eyes, but he's not a bad guy. It's all out of his control, and all of this was foisted upon him before he was even born. He's a sympathetic protagonist who you feel bad for throughout. And Dorff really sells the confusion at the ridiculous later plot developments.
Where did you get an idea like that?
I don't know. I thought I heard it somewhere.
From who? Who would say something like that?
Lou?
What is this with Lou? How do you know him?
It feels like he's on the same page as the audience, going, what the fuck is even happening? It helps some of the more contrived plot developments go down a little bit easier. Spontaneous Combustion almost feels like a superhero origin story. With hardly any tweaking, I can see this guy becoming an X-Man. If things like continuity errors really bother you, then you will have a hard time with Spontaneous Combustion, because there's a ton of them. Overall, the editing is pretty weak, and scenes are awkwardly paced, with some truly unnecessary pauses and lingering silences that do nothing for the film. And some strange reaction shots of characters where their reactions don't seem to fit into the scene at all.
Yes, it is. It says that you're a very lucky man with a purpose.
Then there's some stuff that's just weird. Strange directorial choices, like having this one scientist stand right in front of a prominent air vent for no reason that I can discern. Or this bizarre moment where a dude pulls a skull out of one of the burned parents' head. Like, why is he pulling their skull out with tweezers? How does that help prove his case that it's spontaneous combustion? And most importantly, why the hell is that adult male's skull so tiny? I can't answer any of these questions. Lots of things happen that really needed setups, like the glass panels that the bad guy lands on, this old security guard that's supposed to have a long history and personal relationship with the protagonist, but only appears in this one scene where he dies.
I thought you were my friend.
These things would function so much better if they were just set up in the first act. It's pretty basic screenwriting stuff. Setups and payoffs. With another draft or two, or maybe just a different screenwriter, this story could be something really great. And here's the thing. The version of Spontaneous Combustion that we're all watching is not how the film was meant to turn out. This was a classic case of studio interference. In an interview with Fangoria magazine, Brad Dourif said, quote, "I found myself at the mercy of people who didn't know what they were doing. I probably shouldn't be saying this, but my feeling is the producers destroyed it. Toby could have made 3 different movies with the material he had, and each one would have worked. But by the time he got it, it had changed from a love story to a suspense thriller about my character's paranoid fantasy to a guy who goes crazy film about an insane killer who becomes a destructive force that's going to wipe out mankind. We went back and kind of restructured it as a love story, but it didn't really help." And this explains a lot of the strangeness in the film that just does not work, and why the plot flat out does not make sense in certain scenes. It's always a shame when producers mess up a potentially great film. It happens far too often that directors have to fight to try to make a film work in spite of the studio and producers, rather than the studio and producers enabling the director to fulfill their vision, which is how it should be. As is, I think it's still way better than most people give it credit for. It's plenty enjoyable, if admittedly messy. Dourif's performance and Hooper's direction make up for a lot of the script's shortcomings and the bizarre editing and story developments. The very last scene kind of sucks, even though the idea works in theory, but the rest of the climax is great, and the way smoke is just constantly radiating off of Dourif in these final moments is just so cool. In the end, is Spontaneous Combustion some forgotten masterpiece? No. But is it a forgotten, pretty good piece? Yeah, I think so. Check it out if you feel so inclined. Subscribe to Brickwall Pictures, check out my other Deserves More Respect videos, and check out the rest of the 2021 Macabre Month of Horror.